Hello, in this video tutorial I'll be showing you how to apply the Dragan effect to your portraits. So here we have the original image, and what we're going to do is apply a series of effects that will enhance tone and edge sharpness to really pull out detail and facial features so that we end up with an end result that looks just like this. Now the Dragan effect, as you can see, looks very similar to an HDR effect, and basically what it does is help to enhance tone and detail, getting this very striking look. Now, unlike HDR high dynamic range, we don't need a series of differently exposed shots in order to create it, and instead we just use one single raw file. So what we'll do is we get straight into it, and I'll close these down and open our Dragan before.cr2 file in Adobe Camera Raw. So here we have the Adobe Camera Raw interface, and we've opened up our Dragan before.cr2 file. And the first thing that we want to do is just to boost the contrast within the image. So we'll go straight down to the Basics tab, and we're going to increase the contrast right up to plus 100. And as you can see, as we do that, we're really darkening down the image, so we've got a very underexposed shot. So to lighten it up, we're going to use exposure, and as always with exposure, you should never go above +2 or -2 if you want the best quality image. So we're going to increase that to plus 1.8. And as you can see, that's just lightened up the detail a little bit and also helped to improve the exposure. Now that we've done that, we want to really boost the shadow detail on the right hand side of the face. So to do that, we're going to boost the fill light slider all the way up to 100. So that's right up to its maximum amount. Now, after boosting the shadows, we just want to draw back a few of those highlights, so we're going to use the recovery slider and again increase that up to plus 60. That just helps to pull back a few of the highlights on the left hand side of the forehead. Now, as we've made these enhancements, we've also introduced quite a bit of noise into that background. So I'm just going to boost the blacks from the default value of 5 up to 10, and that's just to help to minimize the noise in the background. So once I've done that, I've finished within Adobe Camera Raw, and I'm ready to go to PhotoShop Elements itself. So to do that, all I need to do is click Open Image, and that'll open the image within Adobe Photoshop Elements. Okay, so we can now take a look at enhancing those tones, but before we start, we just want to duplicate our background layer. So if we go to the Layers palette, just left click and drag and drop that layer directly onto the new layer icon, and that'll very quickly create us a new background copy layer. Now I really want to pull out some of the tones and the details within the picture, and a quick and easy way to do this is just to use the shadows and highlights slider. So if I go up to Enhance, down to Adjust Lighting and select Shadows and Highlights, and it'll automatically apply its default settings. Now lightening the shadows by 25%, as you can see, is blowing out quite a bit of the highlight on the forehead. So I'm just going to reduce that down to about 15%. Again, I just want to pull back some of the highlights, so I'm going to increase the highlights to about 35%, and then finally to really pull out the mid-tone contrast, which will help to highlight detail, I'm going to increase the mid-tone contrast right up to 25%. Now if I just click Preview Before and After, and you can see the effect that that has on the image. So I'll just click OK to apply that. Now that I've done that, again we're getting a bit of noise in the background. I also want to help to increase the contrast, so I'm going to just apply a levels adjustment to this layer. So if I go up to Enhance, down to Adjust Lighting and down to Levels, I just want to clip into the shadows to about 20. I'm also going to bring the highlight slider down just to meet the edge of the histogram to about 230. Once I've done that, helping to increase the contrast, I'll just click OK. Now, as before, just going to duplicate that layer. Now I'm going to create a black and white layer to help pull out a bit more detail and help sharpen the image. So if I go straight up to Enhance, down to Adjust Color and Remove Color, then duplicate that layer again, and I want to invert that so it's negative, so just go Control I or Option I on a Mac, and then I'm going to apply a blur to that, a Gaussian blur of about 10. So go up to Filter, down to Blur, down to Gaussian blur, set the radius at 10 pixels and just click OK. Now reduce the opacity down to about 30%, and I want to change my blending mode simply to overlay. And as I do that, you can already see how that detail's just increasing within the image. If I just flick that layer off and on, and you can just see the effect that that's had on the tone of the image. Now to get the colour back, I'm going to click back onto background copy 2, and I'm just going to reduce the opacity of that black and white layer to about 50%, which will bring back the colour within the image. Now, contrast is looking pretty good, but I want to give that a further tweak, and I can do that with a levels adjustment layer. So if I click back onto background copy 3, down to my adjustment layers and select levels, and this time I'm going to increase the shadows to 25, and again pull the highlights back down to about 230. So we're almost there with our Dragan effect, but at the moment the blue of the shirt's looking a little bit too vibrant, and the skin tones are just looking a little bit too vibrant as well. So I'm going to use hue saturation adjustment layer. First of all, just reduce the saturation down to about -15. Then to pull back the colour of the blue shirt, click on the edit menu and select blues, and just reduce the saturation of the blues down to -70. And by doing that, we've got a lot better colour, skin tone, and also that blue shirt has stopped distracting from the rest of the image. So now we've done the main enhancements to our Dragan effect, we can now flatten all of those layers down into one. So if I go up to my layer options and select flatten image, that'll flatten down all of those layers into the single background layer. So we're almost there with the Dragan effect, but I just want to tidy the image up a little bit. And here we can see there's some quite heavy shadows cast by the glasses. So first thing I want to do is just zoom in using Ctrl+, then just move the image around by holding down spacebar and left clicking. Now that I've done that, I want to select the healing brush tool, and then hold down Alt to take a clone point, and now I can just very quickly use that to just remove or to reduce the effect of the shadow cast by the glasses. By using the healing brush, it's quite a quick and easy process, as Photoshop actually does a lot of this sort of healing and the effect for you. So it just takes a couple of minutes just to tidy that up. Now if I zoom out, you can see the effect of the image is a lot cleaner. So there we have our final Dragan effect portrait, but this effect really lends itself to black and white conversion as well. So if you want to do a quick black and white conversion to your Dragan effect portrait, the quickest, easiest way to do that is with a hue saturation adjustment layer. So if we go back over to our layer palette, select adjustment layers and down to hue saturation, and we can very quickly just desaturate the whole image by moving the saturation slider right down to -100. And as you can see, the effect is very quick and easy. We've already got quite a nice looking black and white conversion. But if we want to go in and just make a few more changes and really affect the tones and how the colours convert to tone, we can then use the edit drop down just to fine tune the effect. So if we click on our edit drop down, first of all we'll select reds, and then we can lighten all the reds within the image by increasing the lightness, or darken the reds just by reducing the lightness. So I would just want to darken the reds just slightly down to about -30. Then I'm going to go in and just adjust the yellows. Again, just increase those slightly, which will just help to lighten the area under the eyes. And finally, I'm just going to use a little bit of blue just to darken down the shirt and reduce the lightness of that right down to -100. So as you see, we've now got quite a nice black and white conversion. And the last step that I want to do is just to apply a final levels adjustment. So if I go to my adjustment layers, down to levels, I just want to clip very slightly into the shadows, and again just into the highlights down to about 230. And as you can see, the effect of that is quite nice on most of the face, but over here on the left hand side, just blowing out a few of the highlights. So I'm just going to select the black brush and then making sure the mask on the levels layer is selected. Just brush over the hair and the burnt out area of the forehead. That just pulls back those burnt out highlights, a little bit on the shirt as well. Finally, just flatten down the image just by going to Layer Palette Options, selecting Flatten Image. There we have our final black and white Dragan effect portrait.